Nous sommes jeunes et nous vivons pour l'instant.
Hi, my name's Rhoda Dakar, and you're listening to the Stateside Madness podcast.
Hi there, folks out there. I'd like you to meet Tommy McGuire and his combo.
Hello, and welcome to the Stateside Madness podcast, the one and only podcast of the official Madness American fan service. I'm Lori, along with my co-host Polly, here to bring you news, reviews, and deep dives into the nutty sound of the British pop band Madness. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Stateside Madness podcast. I'm Lori.
And I'm Polly.
We have a special guest in our studio today, but before we get to that, what time is it, Polly?
It is time for the communicator. Up on the communicator, it is a Stateside Madness event. So Stateside Madness is going to be having a get-together in San Francisco on May 27th at 5 p.m. Now, we're going to be meeting at Johnny Foley's Irish House at 243 O'Farrell Street. Now, we're going to have some drinks. We might be interviewing you to appear on the podcast, and we'll have some giveaways. I will be there myself, so come meet me and other Madness fans.
Let me tell you how I feel. I feel I'm scared.
Chris, what time is it?
Showtime.
So on the podcast today, folks, we have the woman herself, Rhoda Dakar. She's been nice enough to grace us with her presence and allow us to ask her all sorts of questions about the illustrious career that she has had. So rather than listen to me anymore, why don't I just say, here's Rhoda Dakar. Thank you, Rhoda.
Hello, it's Rhoda Dakar.
That's
Yes,
there we go.
Rhoda Dakar. No, because it's that's just how it's said. Because I mean, obviously, it was the name that my dad decided on the way to registering my birth. He also, I think, when he acted, he also went out as Dakar, but it wasn't his name. Anyway, so yeah, Dakar. I'm Dakar, like the capital of Senegal, because that's where he decided we were from. This is before you could do genetic testing. So we might not be from there, might be all a lie. Well, back in my dad's day. In fact, to be honest, 20 years ago, you had to create your own story because there was no way of telling what your story was. Anybody whose family survived the transatlantic slave trade doesn't know what their story is. So, yeah, it's all conjecture.
Why don't we start at the beginning? What was your earliest experience with music, whether it's in terms of the first album that you bought or really just whatever you remember?
First experience with music, I suppose, is hearing my dad sing around the house. Then hearing my parents' records, which would have been 78s, and singing myself. Because I started singing on, I started doing sort of singing and dancing, and so my first shows were with pensioners, what you call seniors. So they're kind of at their homes or at social gatherings, and so they're the first people I ever performed to when I was a kid. So I guess that's my first singing in public experience. as regards buying music, first thing I bought was My Boy Lollipop with the help of my cousin Janice, whose parents lived in Lagos at the time, and I think she'd seen Millie Small play in Nigeria, so she was kind of a fan, and she took me to go and buy My Boy Lollipop from a place called Desmond's Hip City, which is sadly no longer there, but what a fantastic name for a record shop.
Any experience performing before being, rather, maybe between what you just explained and before starting with Bodysnatchers?
Yeah, I was in youth theatre, so I used to do a lot of acting. I was in a thing called the Old Vic Youth Theatre, and the Old Vic was very prestigious theatre in South London, on Waterloo, on the corner of Waterloo Road and the Cut, and it's where the National Theatre started, where the British National Theatre started before it moved to its own purpose-built setting just a bit up the road. But yeah, it was a very prestigious theatre, and that's where I started. That I used to act there, and at school obviously as well. And because of that, my first job was working as a wardrobe assistant at the Young Vic, which was a theatre that was aimed most specifically at young people, and had been part of the National Theatre, I think, originally, and that was just over the road from the Old Vic. So bizarrely, yeah, because I wanted to be an actress. And until I realised that I would play nurses and prostitutes for the rest of my life, and never get to play Shakespeare on the Old Vic stage like I had been doing, I just thought, no, I'll go to music. At least I'll get a chance there.
So how organically did Bodysnatchers come around? Was there
because I was the last one in. So I don't know. I mean, they put an ad in the music papers, in Melody Maker specifically, which is where everyone used to put their ads. But yeah, I saw it, but I ignored it because I'd answered a few ads and the people were idiots. So I thought, yeah, this is only going to be the same. So I didn't bother to answer it, but I had seen it. It started with calling all rude girls. And my reaction to that was, oh, here we go. So I didn't really bother. I met Nikki, the bass player who started it. I met her at a gig, and I'd gone to see my mate's brother's band. So that's June Miles Kingston's brothers had a band called Stay Pressed, and I'd gone to see them after work on a Saturday. Because not content with a Monday to Friday office job, I also worked in a clothes shop on Saturdays. And after work, because I worked on the King's Road, it was just a little, short hop to Fulham, which is where they were playing at Greyhound. And I went to see them, and Shane McGowan introduced me to Nikki. Nikki asked me, so, she'd said, can you introduce me? So that's how we met.
And so in the early days, then you were running in the same circles as Shane. You would the Bodysnatchers ended up supporting them, didn't they?
Yeah. Our second gig was supporting the Nips, yeah. But I think running in the same circles as Shane, I think Shane had his own circle of hell, his own particular circle of hell. And I didn't really run in that, no. But no, I knew Shane from around the punk scene, because that's where I'd been kind of around that. So I had been around the punk scene for a few years, and then I'd kind of got into the mod thing. It was when it was essentially when Knox from the Vibrator said to me, I can't believe you're still wearing bondage trousers. He said it as a joke, but I actually thought, I can't. maybe it's time for a change. So I started wearing old 60s clothes instead.
I'm dying to know, was the band named after the movie Invasion of the Bodysnatchers, or was there another story behind yeah?
No, it was named after, because there was the remake. There was a remake right at that time. And when we were trying to think of a name, there was this whole list of names. And the name that everyone except me really liked was Pussy Galore. And I just said, you can call yourselves that, but I won't be in the band. So we had to, the second one was the Bodysnatchers. I mean, I know there is a band called Pussy Galore now, but the thing is, we're talking the end of the 70s, back end of the 70s. An all-female band couldn't call themselves Pussy Galore and not be mercilessly ridiculed, sadly.
Yep.
And that was a little bit from the single, Let's Do Rocksteady, and its B-side, Ruder Than You.
While this was going on, so you were very big in the two-tone ska movement. What was it like when this movement was starting to pick up speed, and how did you, as a band, fall into this?
Well, our second ever gig, when we were supporting the Nips, Jerry Dammers, Pauline Black, and Juliet DeVee, as she was then, but Juliet Wills, who is now Billy Bragg's manager, she used to manage the Selector, and they all came along to our second gig. So that's how we got into it. It was that simple. They found us, not the other way around.
When it was happening, did you view it as a type of movement, or was it more or less just something that happens to a young person in a band?
What, you're talking about Two Tone?
Yeah.
I mean, well, Two Tone was a record label. So, I mean, that's how I viewed it, as a record label. There may have been a movement, but I was coming out of I was kind of part of the mod thing. And so to end up in a band playing, I mean, music that I'd grown up with, that I liked very much, I wasn't really part of it because I was already in a band by then. So in a way, there may well have been, and I obviously must have witnessed at a distance this movement, but I wasn't part of it because it was something that kind of happened out there, and it probably happened in the rest of the country more so than it happened in London. So, and I'm sort of very much a Londoner, so my experience was what happened in London, not really what happened in the rest of the country. And I only knew that when we went out there and played. So, and that didn't happen. I suppose that happened on the second Two Tone tour when we went out with Selector.
So that was Easy Life by the Bodysnatchers and To Experience, which was the B-side of the Easy Life single. So who were your early musical influences then?
Influences. Do you actually mean influences or people that I admired? I mean, because the musical influences has got to be something like someone like you know, I don't know, Liza Minnelli.
Oh.
Or Shirley Bassey. That's my musical influence, because when I sing, that's who I'm channeling. I'm not channeling other people. I mean, I'm channeling, you know, I'm channeling Shirley Bassey. As a kid at parties, I used to do, we all had to do our party piece. And there were two things I used to do. One was Desmond Dekker singing Israelites, and the other was Shirley Bassey singing Big Spender. So, you know, you can, I don't sound like Desmond Dekker. So I think we can safely say that wasn't my influence. But, you know, I started out singing old musical songs. And when I say music, I mean music hall, not musical. So music, I'm trying to remember the word. But yeah, it was the thing that was kind of came from the end of the 19th century into the 20th century. So it's that vaudeville, I suppose you called it, didn't you? Yeah, you called it vaudeville. So that would have been my influence, that sort of music. But the English version. So I was kind of singing those songs, you know, the boy I love is up in the gallery. The boy I love is looking down at me. It's all that kind of thing. So that's where those are the kind of things I learned to sing when I was a kid. But also then there would have been the records that my mum and dad had. So I guess that, I mean, no, I suppose not, because I didn't really sing jazz along with them. But yeah, so that would have been my vocal influence. That's how I learned to sing. And then my musical influences sort of came later. But the reality is those people had also been influenced by exactly the same people I had. So, you know, when I listen to, trying to think, if you listen to, say, someone like Marcia Griffith, who I think has an amazing voice, she clearly learned to sing properly. She has very good diction and enunciation and all of that. So she clearly learned to sing listening to those same people, because that's how she sings. You know, she sings like she could be in musical, as in one word. So I suppose it's all the same, really. And when I was kind of in my mid-teens, I was a massive David Bowie fan, and he clearly sounds like he had the sort of music hall, as in vaudeville, influence in the way he sings. So it's all kind of pretty much of a muchness, I guess.
And I'm going a little off script here, but you just released a cover of a Bowie song too, didn't you?
Yeah, Man Who Sold the World. Yeah.
Very unique spin on that song. I really enjoyed it.
Well, there was, back in the day, there was a reggae version, but it wasn't very, and the music was okay, but the vocal was really not very good at all. It was kind of like there was no real effort or belief in the vocal. So I just thought, I know I can do better than that. So we did another version.
Fair enough. So back to the Bodysnatchers, you said you responded to the ad, Melody Maker.
No, I didn't respond. I didn't respond to the ad.
Oh,
no, apologies. I ignored the ad. No, I ignored the ad.
That's right.
Yeah.
I misinterpreted the story. So when you did arrive with the Bodysnatchers, were they more or less up and running, having the set list, having their routine down, and you just joined in? Or was there any room for collaboration at that point?
Well, they were kind of just learning to play, I suppose, really. So yeah, they'd kind of got everything together that they wanted to do. They knew what they wanted to be their first single, if they got a single and things like that. So it was, you know, but I was still, you know, I'd kind of just come out of youth theatre. We did our first gig. We had one original song, which was The Boiler, and the reason it was, I suppose, the way it was is because I had been doing acting and knew how to improvise, but didn't really know how to write a song. So they were just playing some music and I improvised over it and improvised a story. So that's how that came about. But that was our first original song. So there was some collaboration.
And of course, you know, everybody's familiar with, you know, the two singles and the B-sides, which feature prominently. But I was really taken with Hiawatha. Is there anything, you know, to mention about the origin of that song?
SJ was obsessed with Native American fashion. I mean, she liked tassels. I don't know. And there was a thing for moccasins. Loads of people were wearing moccasins at the time. And I think that was so she did I think she came up with the tune. It was a bit like, you know, that was her take on what Native American music sounded like. I don't for 1 minute suppose it's, you know, it was, I mean, it's what Native American music had been taught to us as through film. So it wasn't, you know, there's no authenticity really. But yeah, I mean, that's a weird old, it feels like, you know, or some dreadful cultural appropriation now. And even when I re-recorded it, which is now, how many years ago? 8 years ago, I still had to change some of the lyrics because I just couldn't physically say them. I just thought this is just too awful. But yeah, I don't know, naivety.
Yeah, that was a little bit from the song we just mentioned, Hiawatha. I only would have been familiar with the version that you had released anyways on Sings the Bodysnatchers, so it would have been an updated version at that.
Yeah, well, the Bell Stars released it as their first single, oddly enough. It was the last single, it was the last tune that the Bodysnatchers wrote together, and it was the first single by the Bell Stars. So they released it. So they released the version we don't speak of. That was released by them in 1981, I guess.
Now, interestingly enough, you were signed as a band to the Two Tone label and you put out 2 singles, but you didn't actually put out an album with them. Why is that?
Because we weren't signed to make an album. Previously, the plan had been you do one single on Two Tone and then you would get snapped up by another label and you would do your album with them. So, which made perfect sense, except that in his infinite wisdom, Jerry decided that we should have to do 2 singles. So in between the first and second single, the power of Two Tone started to wane. So once the second single was done, we were left high and dry because all the offers had been around the time we signed for the first single. So people were sending us offers. I mean, it was, you know, because it was like, it was the new black, basically. So everyone wanted to sign us. And they were saying, well, don't sign the Two Tone, just sign with us and we'll develop you. And to be honest, had we done that, we probably would have been carried on working. But because we signed a two-tone, we had this daft 2-single deal. We were just kind of left, right, okay, well, the ship sailed. What do we do now? So we didn't have anything. So we kind of ended our two-tone deal with a single that didn't chart particularly well, because everyone was starting to look for the next thing, and no, not infrastructure, but like we had no management, no agent, nothing. So essentially we had done about 200 gigs in about 11 months, and gone from being fairly rubbish to like, pretty good, and just had nothing at the end of it. And we were just exhausted. So nothing, we didn't do an album because we didn't have an album deal.
Well, from there, you moved on to a period, working with Jerry Thomas quite a bit, but initially working alongside the Specials. It's been written about, rumored much, that the cracks were starting to show in that band at that time. Was that a harmonious or easy period for you to join? Or?
Well, I mean, I don't think the Specials ever been particularly harmonious. They're not those sort of people. It's not, it's not especially harmonious. They're not like that. I mean, bands aren't, by and large. I mean, they get a bit more harmonious as they get older, but, mostly people aren't like that. And no, it wasn't especially harmonious. But I mean, I'd been on tour, because when we did the Seaside Specials tour, which was the Specials, Bodysnatchers and the Go-Go's, I'd already been on tour with the Specials, so I knew it wasn't fun. They weren't fun by then. No harmony, good Lord, no.
You saw a woman in a cafe, lips of crimson, yellow grin. Her shoes were wrong and she looked extremely thin. Her jewels were faked, she'd had a rinse, her hair was greyish blue. She looked ashamed when she explained to you. It ain't easy when there's no one to lean on. It ain't easy when there's nobody there. It ain't easy when your lovers are all gone. Nobody there, nobody cares. When I woke up this morning, alone in my bed, in the cold room with down the sheets and the pain in my head, I saw you last night and you drove me insane. Almost you had me getting around again. I've had enough. If I don't come back for more, that's tough, 'cause I can't stand it the way you planned it. No, I can't stand it any longer.
Okay, so we just heard Pearl's Cafe, followed by I Can't Stand It, which are both by the Specials featuring Rhoda Dakar.
But I have to say, within the arguments or whatever, there were like moments of deep comedy, but that's probably because I've got a really, my humor is pretty dark. But that was the thing. There were like moments of deep humor, but on tour, tours are like that anyway. There are moments of great humor, and there's always somebody in the band who's very funny, and others who are just a pain in the backside. So it happens. It's normal.
So you moved along with Jerry to the Special AKA and had, amongst other great songs, two really important ones. So one you've already mentioned, The Boiler, and Free Nelson Mandela. So could you talk a little bit about what is special to you about these two songs?
They don't feel particularly special. I suppose the Boiler, because it was the only song, the only original song that carried all the way through the Bodysnatchers. I guess it was an important thing to talk about, date rape, because it wasn't something that was particularly spoken about.
I went out shopping last Saturday. I was getting some gear and this guy offered to pay. Who's the hunk? I think to myself. For so many years I've been left on the shelf. An old boiler. Then we went walking back down the high street and I felt really proud because he looked so neat. He was a real hard man, tough as they come. He said I was cool, but I still felt like an old boiler.
And that, of course, is the unmistakable song, The Boiler.
Free Nelson Mandela, yeah, it was all right. I don't know what to say about that. Yeah, I suppose the good thing is I remember seeing a news report where there was a rally, and it couldn't have been in South Africa because the ANC were banned in South Africa, so it must have been in Zimbabwe or a neighbouring country where the crowd was actually singing Free Nelson Mandela. So that actually made it worthwhile. But, you know, I don't know, I suppose my enjoyment of it all was blighted by the fact that we ended up getting it, you know, lawyers got involved and it was a nightmare as usual. So, yeah, I don't have great memories of anything to do with Special AKA, to be honest. It was pretty much a horror story. A horror story never to be repeated.
That was Free Nelson Mandela by the Special AKA with Rhoda Dakar.
Well, we can move on to happier times then. So 2000
Almost anything is, yeah.
2007 rolls around and you come out with the album Cleaning Another Woman's Kitchen.
Yeah.
What made it the right time in 2007 to do that?
Somebody was saying, because I was working with Nick Welsh. In fact, now the truth behind it is that Pauline said to Nick, "Why don't you write a song with Rhoda?" And so we wrote a song, and then we carried on writing songs, and so we had enough for an album. I mean, that's how that came about. And we got a distribution deal through whatever it was, I can't remember. But I mean, you know, we got a distribution deal, and so that's how that came about. But it was just, you know, it was just like I used to go to Nick's house on a Wednesday, and we used to write songs on Wednesday afternoons, and that's what we did. And you know, when you have to, it's a good thing to do. It's good discipline to get into, like meeting up every week and knowing that you have to come up with something in that time. And you don't use all of it, but you know, if you work at songs can be crafted, not just, they don't have to just come to you in the middle of the night. You can craft songs, and I suppose it was a good time to do that. There's no pressure.
Let me put you straight. This is my house, not yours. Let me put you straight. You're a thief, not a cause. I'm sorry if you feel life has dealt you a blow. But let me put you straight. This won't cure it now, go. Cure it now, go. Go. Won't cure it now, go.
You've just heard Private World from the album Cleaning in Another Woman's Kitchen.
So I suppose what we'll move on to is what's going to be of keen interest to a lot of our fans, and that's your association and your working relationship with Madness. So of course you guys were all around at the same time starting out. Did you spend any amount of time with them in their early days?
Yeah, we gigged with them in their early days. So I think our first gig with them was in 1979. So yeah, we played with them early doors. Lee had taught Miranda how to play sax, because Miranda used to go out of Vedders. So we knew them from the off, really. And also we used to rehearse in Camden, so we used to bump into them and whatever. But yeah, I've known them since 1979.
So how did it come about? Now, this was obviously a little bit later, Liberty of Norton Folgate album, 2009. How did it come about that you recorded with them on the song On the Town, which is, by the way, an amazing, amazing duet?
Thank you. Yeah, it's a great song. Mike rang me up. Yeah, he rang me up and said, "Oh, I've got this song, fancy singing it." I went, yeah, all right. There you go. That's how it happened. You know, people we used to bump into each other. So like, yeah, he rang me up. It was recorded like a year beforehand, because we did that show. Because we went in the studio and then we went to we did a rehearsal for the show at Hackney Empire the same day. So and the show I think was the day after and the day after.
We watched the DVD of the Hackney show, and the crowd just went nuts when you took the stage. That had to be a really cool feeling.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, all right.
Well, I guess the thing is, the faces at the front I knew anyway, so it's not like I didn't know people, because I don't know. It can't have been just an invited crowd. It must have sold tickets, but I mean, I knew a lot of the people in the crowd anyway, and so it wasn't. I wasn't walking into a room full of strangers. I was walking to a room full of, there was a good proportion of people I knew anyway. But yeah, I mean, I got a big introduction though. If I remember rightly, there was a big introduction. So it wasn't like they didn't know who I was.
Oh, it's early in the morning, it's raining and the streetlights shining through my window, casting shadows on the ceiling. The room is oh so empty, I stand against the wall. The clock is ticking loudly, it's deafening in this quiet room. Oh, how long have I been waiting?
What am I to say? Inside I don't want to stay. Oh, 'cause I've been on the town, sick and tired of your frown.
I could hear you in the hallway.
And that, of course, was On the Town, Madness with our special guest, Rhoda.
You see, you say I walked on, but I was already stood at the side of the stage watching the gig anyway, because I just thought the songs were on that album absolutely brilliant. It's such a brilliant album, and I would like you know, help with the props and things. I was like stood at the side, I was stood in the wings, like holding, if someone needed to take a jacket off, I was like holding the jacket and things like that. So, you know, I was at the side of the stage watching anyway. So I was kind of taking it all in. It was amazing. It was an amazing show.
You went on to record then a cover of Tears You Can't Hide for, I think it was,
Oh,
was
yeah,
it,
yeah.
yeah, for
Volume
your,
one.
yeah, for volume 1. Why in particular, I mean, you no doubt selected these songs. What was it about Tears You Can't Hide that made you decide you wanted to cover that one?
Well, I mean, because Suggs has such a particular vocal style, you can't really, it's not really something I could cover convincingly. And that song was sung by, it was sung by Carl. So it was, I could sing that because he'd sung it. But definitely, I mean, and it was a great, I really liked the song. Well, we did add bits to it though, because I think Louis described it as, well, we finished it for you. But yeah, it was, yeah, we added bits to it, but it basically, I did it because Carl had sung it. So it meant that it was accessible. Because you can't sing like Suggs, because he's not really, I mean, his delivery is particular, shall we say.
So that was Rhoda's cover of Tears You Can't Hide, the Madness song. And that appears on the Low Tech 4 Volume 1.
Lori, do you have anything else for Rhoda?
Well, actually, can you speak a little bit? I've heard rumors that you have a new album coming out later this year. Are they true?
Yeah, well, they could be true if everything gets where it needs to be at the right time. So it'll either be the end of this year, beginning of next year. I don't know at this stage. I mean, the plan is for the end of this year, but you know, the way things are going, who knows? It might not come out till beginning of next year. But either way, it is, it has been delivered and it has been mastered. I don't know if it's actually got to a pressing plant yet, and if the pressing plant is up and running. So,
well, what can fans expect on the new album?
Well, it's called Version Girl. So it's basically I've done versions of other songs. So it was a lockdown project really that kind of took ages because it was in lockdown. It started in lockdown, and because in lockdown we couldn't really meet up, you had to do. There was a window suddenly where we could go in the studio, and we did every day is like Sunday, because that had been my experience. Being in lockdown, every day was like Sunday. You didn't know what day it was. You had to kind of check the calendar to see what day. You know, if you wanted to go to the shops, check the calendar, see what day it is, to see if they were open that day or at what time and whatever. It was all a bit weird, and every day ran into each other. So that was the idea of doing that. We did that, and we actually recorded another tune, an original tune, to go on the B-side, but then we got offered a recording deal at kind of out of the blue to do a couple of singles. So we did that. We just thought, well, let's just let's just do a dub on the B side and keep the other tune for another time. And then that kind of escalated after the first one, after Every Day is Like Sunday, you know, it was fairly well received. There was then an offer to do an album. So, but, you know, we were kind of in and out of lockdown. And so it was all a bit, it took longer than it should have done. It took a lot longer than it should have done. And then you kind of, then real life starts to get in the way. And so you're trying to get this thing done, but I don't know, it just took too long. I don't even know why, really. There were massive delays with one thing and another. But yeah, it just took ages. But basically, it's a collection of songs I really like. Some from my youth, some because they were sung not necessarily originally, but like, for instance, Every Day is Like Sunday. It's the Pretenders version that I always used to listen to because I really like Chrissie Hynde's voice. So it's kind of listening to Chrissie Hynde and songs that she had sung that I really liked.
This is the coastal town that they forgot to lock down. Come Armageddon, come Armageddon, come. Every day is like Sunday. Every day is silent and gray. Hide on a promenade, it's your postcard. How I dearly wish I was not here. In the seaside, we passed upon the stair. We spoke of was and when, although I wasn't there. He said I was his friend, which came as some surprise. I spoke into his eyes. I thought you died alone a long, long time ago. Oh no, not me. I never lost control. Your face to face with the man who sold the world.
And that was a listen to two of Rhoda's recent singles, the Morrissey classic, Every Day is Like Sunday, and the David Bowie classic, The Man Who Sold the World.
And then just other artists that I really like. You know, I really like Patsy Cline's voice, and I was a massive David Bowie fan, so that's what that was about. So, but yeah, I'm doing a lot of sort of reggae ska versions of other songs, and the recent one, the one that's oddly enough has been the physical release is today, the 29th of April. So the physical release day is the 29th of April of Walking After Midnight, which was the Patsy Cline song. Well, Patsy Cline's version. Patsy Cline sang it, yeah.
I go out walking after midnight, down in the moonlight, just like we used to do. I'm always walking after midnight, searching for you. I walk for miles along the highway. Well, that's just my way of saying I love you. I'm always walking after midnight, searching for you.
So that's my latest one. There's a lot of that kind of influence, but there's one or two unlikely tracks on there. So people are gonna go, what? Why did you do that? It's like, oh, because I really like it. It's that simple. But yeah, I mean, no need to talk about those until the track listing is released.
Well, we look forward to hearing it. That's going to be very cool.
Yeah.
And what is Pork Pie and Mashup? Can you tell our listeners a little bit about that?
It's a radio show. Pork pie hats are what the Rude Boys used to wear back in the day. And then there's a there's a London dish called pie mash. So it's pork pie mash, and then mash up, meaning basically mixing styles together. So that's what that is. Basically, it's I can play what I want. It's a radio show. I can play what I want, and I do interview people, not all the time, but we've done this actually oddly enough. I've done, is it 3? I guess it's 3 interviews with Bedders now. So at the beginning of the year, we kind of do a roundup. So what do you reckon then? And we did our 3rd one. And the first time it was because I interviewed him actually at a gig. They just finished playing. So it was like the beginning of their 40th year. And I was at that gig. In fact, it's the first gig that I bought a ticket for. I bought a ticket to see Madness for the first time, to see them on New Year's Eve in London. And and I was laughed at mercilessly for buying a ticket. I was like, "What are you buying a ticket for?" And I said, "Well, I just thought about time I did. About time I stuck my hand in my pocket." And so I went to this gig, the New Year's Eve one, and it was great. It was great to be there with them on New Year's Eve, and so I did an interview with Bedders, because I was doing this thing called 5 Minutes with at the time. Obviously, it went on for longer than 5 minutes, inevitably, because it always does. So I did Bedders, Pauline Black, Roy Ellis of Simmerip. He was hilarious. The some of the things he was saying. And then who else did I interview? Oh, and the Interrupters as well. Interviewed the Interrupters after a gig. So it was all like classic. So I did reuse some of those interviews, I think, in Pork Pie Mashup. So, but I'd wanted to do a radio show for a long time and never got the opportunity.
So that's the first Monday of every month, right?
Yeah.
And listeners can find it on totallywiredradio.com. Is that correct?
But yeah, you find it on Totally Wired Radio, or you can find it on Mixcloud, whichever you can get into, because I don't know, permissions are worldwide from Totally Wired. I imagine they are, but you never know. But yeah, that's what I'm doing. So,
Well, this has been fantastic. I am out. I have nothing left to ask. Unless there's anything you want to impart to American fans.
I'm really pleased you're doing this, because I love that band, and I think they deserve much more recognition in the US. They're coming over, aren't they, this year? Well, this year?
No, it's
canceled.
been canceled a bunch of times. We're working on 2023.
Well, I would like to say I'd love to come back at some point. I don't know how easy that's going to be, because I don't know, not really your kind of genre, but there's like a big artist here called Lil Sims, who just had to cancel her American tour because she just can't make it work financially. It is very difficult touring in America it's a loss leader, basically.
Well, thank you so much, Rhoda. This has been awesome. We really appreciate your time, and our listeners are going to love this. This is going to be great.
I need to go and see what chaos is happening in my house, but thanks very much.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thanks
so much.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Nice to meet you. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you again to Rhoda Dakar for coming in and chatting with us today. It was really, really cool. And thank you to all our listeners.
And as is our we pick a song to end. I think we're going to listen to Live Your Life. It is from Rhoda's CD with Nick Welch, Back to the Garage. And I think it's fairly representative of, our esteemed guests, sort of total vibe. So why don't we take a listen?
We'll be back in 2 weeks with another exciting episode. So it's a goodbye from me.
And that's a goodbye from me. Go get a beer, Stateside Madness.
Nous sommes jeunes et nous vivons pour l'instant.
We get high on disapproval. We see life through retrospects. Tick boxes are the usual. Amphetamines and sex. You're 16 and you're gonna have your say. You're 16 and you only live for today. Live for today. Your maker's not your Bible. Get thrills from sniffing glue. But beer is not your idol. Heartbreakers get you through. You're 16 and you're gonna get your way. You're 16 and you only live for today. It's a heartbreaking, love-making, drug-taking trip that you're on. But the hell-raising, trailblazing, stargazing isn't for long. Live for today. No cash, no use, no problem. It's easy down the street. The habits really got them. The queens of Margaret Street. 16 and you're gonna have your say. You're 16